Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for watching another one of my episodes. William Wallace for America with me today. As you know, I love bringing on candidates, and with me today is a candidate, Scott Stephenson. Scott, how are you doing today, my friend?
Super well, William. It is awesome to be here. Thank you very much for having me on.
You're welcome. Well, I tell you, I always tell people I love bringing on candidates because they're some of the most passionate about their ideas in our country. But when I met you at CPAC, I got to know you a little bit, learn a little bit about you, and of course, your wife was with you, and the way you all talked and worked together, it kind of was a testament of the person that you are. So I wanted to make sure I got a chance to bring you on. Well,
I really have been looking forward to this. It's a real honor and privilege to be here. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Well, Scott, tell us about where your district is. I know it's is it Washington 8, correct?
So I'm out here in the Pacific Northwest. This is District 8 of Washington, where I'm sitting right now. District 8 is a huge district. It spans about 10,000 square miles. It covers forest, mountains. It spans the Cascade Range from the western side of the state all the way to the east. So we have the really wet, very forested, pine forested west side, and then on the east, it's mostly grasslands and drier climate. So it's a very diverse district. We have agriculture, vineyards, apple growing is a big part of the state. We're a big apple producer here in Washington State. So this district is everything from technology over to the other side of apple and agriculture and farming of all sorts. So it's a really diverse and fascinating and great district.
Well, how far? I mean, how close up to Canada are you all? Are you all? You said all the
Uh,
way east and west, and so I didn't know how close that was. What about the northern boundaries?
Boundaries run probably about an hour away from Canada, maybe an hour and 20 minutes. It's really close. Obviously, Washington borders on Canada. We're just Vancouver, Canada is about 2 hours to 2.5 hours north of Seattle. So we are way up here to the north, obviously bordering on the Pacific. And it's called the Evergreen State, as you can see from where I'm sitting right now. It's quite green, and it's a beautiful place. I'm looking at a big mountain right in front of me, so it's a very mountainous state. And I've been here now about 25 years, and certainly had a great experience being here. So.
Well, it's interesting when you came on online there, and I saw the water in the back. I said, to me, it looks like a bayou. Being a Louisiana guy, I'm looking in the back. I'm like, that looks like a swamp or a bayou in the background, but it's a pond. But I appreciate you making me feel like I'm still at home.
That way, honestly. I put a lot of thought into it. I'm like, will William rather have a big mountain, or would he rather look at something that looks like a swamp? So,
Well, yeah.
so
Well,
here we are.
being a Louisiana guy, I wouldn't know what a mountain looks like. I'm just kidding. you know.
You've probably seen one or two. I know you're kidding, but yeah, this is a beautiful place. It's a wonderful, peaceful environment for our conversation today. So.
So, well, good. We're going to have some time to get a chance to know you because, I think not only is it good for people that are in your area that might be watching this show or afterwards, remember, this all goes on a podcast. So this video that we do is going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on Rumble. And then I'll take the audio off of it and I turn that into a podcast. So people not only in your area can get to know you a little bit better, but also anybody who's just listening in general, might want to hear hear you as a candidate because let's face it. I mean, here in Louisiana, our candidates are going to be different. We have different things going on down here. However, you might have an idea that is working, and somebody down here might go, "Hey, look, that's a great idea. We ought to do that here." In Louisiana, we're always pointing to how good Texas and Mississippi is doing around us. And all of our elected officials are going, wait, why don't we do that? But not everybody does the good things anyway. So let's talk about a lot of the good things today, too, that everybody in our country can benefit, not just the people of Washington.
A lot of similarities. I know that a lot of us are sharing a lot of the same experiences over the last few years. So, I think we'll have a lot to connect on, a lot of ideas to share in our conversation. So I'm looking forward to it.
Good. Well. What about tell us about your background. What did you do before you decided to run? I'm not going to say that you look like a young man in your 20s, but you look young enough. But you look that you might have done a few things here before you ran for Congress. So tell us about those.
No, not in my 20s. I'm in my 50s. So I've had a bit of experience in my life. And what I've been doing really for the last 30 years. Let me flash back a little bit. So I think the fun way to start with this is to say to everybody that I'm a rocket scientist. I'm a legit rocket scientist, uh, which is
Glad
a
they have
lesser
that
known
there.
fact. Yeah, I started. I have a master's degree from MIT in aerospace engineering, and I've had the pleasure in my career of working with both NASA and the Department of Defense. And I've spent the last 30 years of my career working in the internet space. And I've been focused on bringing solutions to customers for billions of people worldwide. So I'm really at my core a problem solver. The one of the things that I think this tech experience is really going to bring, and perhaps most important, is when I get to Congress, I will be one of the most, if not the most technical person that's ever been there, and I intend to use those skills to go after big tech. The big tech oligarchs are not going to like having me there in Congress. They're not going to be running circles around congressmen like they did before. I don't know how many of if you watch those the hearings there, but many of our congressmen didn't know what an algorithm is. They didn't really know how the internet works. You know, I have 30 years of experience, and the internet today is really the town hall, and censorship is really happening. I think we've all seen this. We've seen what's going on now with Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter, and some folks' excitement about that, myself included. And what I intend to do is bring free speech back to the internet and end the censorship. And my 30 years of tech will really help with that. So that's my background. The reason I'm in the race essentially is because I took a look at the field out here in Washington, and I'm running against three other Republicans in the race. And a couple things I noticed that caused me to enter the race. One of them, none of them are America first, and I'd love to dive into that a bit with you, William,
It
as
was,
we
yeah,
continue our
exactly.
conversations. Happy to do that. And none of them are fighters. What I'm seeing of the candidates, and this is happening, I believe, in a lot of places, be curious if it's happening where you are as well, is that the Republican Party is putting forward the same type of recycled candidates that they always have done in the past. And really, these candidates, especially here in Washington, are just not appealing to the voter, especially the America First and MAGA voters that live sort of east of the mountains. And the result is that the Republicans generally don't do well in this state, or as well
Wait,
as they could.
now, you said something. You said east of the mountains. Does that mean that all the Republicans are hiding in the mountains? I mean, I,
Well,
I,
I did used to
now
go on the mountain.
some of that I'm joking, but some of it, I'm using it as a segue because people don't realize that the state of Washington land mass is really Republican. It's really more red than anything. The reason why it votes blue is mainly those city centers. So I think that's an interesting point that when you talk about when you first said MAGA, I went, wait a minute now, you're going to turn your voters off, but because you think of Washington as being a Democrat state, but in all actuality, landmass in the area where you are is red, right?
Think of the state. There are a little over 7 million people in the state of Washington. About 2.5 million of those, or a little less, live in the what's called King County, which is the largest county in the state, and it's also where Seattle is. And Seattle, as I think people have seen, is very, very liberal, very left. We've seen the defunding of the police in Seattle. We have a lot of at best socialist or some what I would argue are Marxist or communist folks that have been elected to our city council and also represent us in the federal government. And it's a very, very tough place. The laws are not being enforced. We have an incredible drug problem. People are smoking fentanyl on our buses, on our trains. None of the laws are being enforced. It is a really, really horrific example of what happens when you have the radical left in control of your government. However, when you get outside of that area, what you have are people who are farmers, they're ranchers, they work in vineyards, they raise fruit. We have a big fisheries industry, and a big forestry industry. All of these businesses on the red side of things, the conservative side of things. Geographically, we have sort of, to the west, over towards the Pacific Ocean, in at least in the Seattle area, tends to be where more of the blue folks are in the King County area. But as you rise up towards the mountains and head east, it gets more and more conservative. And as you head over the mountains, you end up in the higher desert parts of the state, and that is entirely conservative territory. So the majority of Washington State is in fact conservative, and that's, I think, something that most people might not know about our state.
And what I find interesting, like when you talk about the liberals and the lefts, I tend to try to tell people things that I when I give the definition of what I think the left is, it's more of that far left. There's a lot of these people that are just their ordinary Democrats that in some ways are almost as conservative as some people that are on the right. Because I always say conservatism knows no party line, and there's plenty of Democrats who have conservative values. But what happens is those narratives and the media gets hijacked by the people that are on the far left, and they use those narratives to kind of manipulate minds, if you will, to get those votes pulled that way. So I don't think that, and what I'm trying to do here is, show Washington is not that blue state that everybody thinks it is, but as we discussed a little few minutes ago, that it's really more of a red state landmass wise. But I think even population wise, it would probably be more red if we had more people that worked on things that unite us instead of the narratives that divide us. And speaking of that, what do you think are
Yeah.
some things? What do you think are some things that unite us for your state and your district that when you get in office, that you're going to be able to use those things to bring more people to the table when you go to DC?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the two big things, and I think these will really cut across the whole country, is one of them is our economy. There's the saying, "It's the economy, stupid," right?
Right.
There's a reason for that statement, right? And we see things like, if you look at the latest Pew Research polls, I'm just looking at the numbers here, 71% of Americans think strengthening our economy should be a top issue. We're seeing 8.7% inflation right now. It's a 40-year high. The American families are struggling. It's
Mhm.
estimated that about $5,000 more per average American family will be spent this year for the same exact things that they got last year. So essentially, they're taking a 8.79% pay cut and rising, right? And that is really, really, really stressing our middle class. And so I think the economy is a huge thing. Gas has doubled in the last year in price. It started around $2, a little over $2 a gallon prior to Biden taking office, and is now well north of $4 a gallon. And so these kinds of things are putting huge stresses on the American family, particularly in areas where people need to use their automobiles to commute to work and things. So I think the economy is a really, really big topic. Some interesting stats about the economy. Did you know that 80% of the money currently in circulation has been printed within the last year?
Well, now that one I did not know.
Astounding fact. And that
Repeat that.
money,
Repeat that again.
80% of the money in circulation has been printed within the last year.
That's
That
unbelievable.
means it means, and then that money that we printed, our government printed, went to, a lot of it went, trillions of it went towards this COVID relief package, right? And when we flood the economy with all of these dollars, two things happen. One, printing money drives inflation. We know that, and that's part of
Mhm.
the reason that we're seeing these higher inflations that are impacting Americans. But secondarily, when you give that America to the money to the American people during a time where you have a supply chain crisis due to COVID, all that happens is it drives up demand for things like couches and automobiles and refrigerators and things that they spend at home. And when they can't purchase those items because they're not available, the prices of those items rise. And so the actual giveaway of the money was, in addition to the printing of the money, to driving inflation. So these are sort of the underlying factors that the federal government has done by this poor economic policy, and that's something that really, really needs to change. And I think that's sort of number one thing that cuts across America, no matter where you are, is that the economy is really stressing us, particularly the middle class.
What's
So
what
that's number
now?
one.
Now I'm circling back a little bit because we got people that come on during the show and people that listen at different times. So I'll bring up a couple things again to kind of connect people. You had said you're a rocket scientist, literally working for NASA, and you seem to know a lot about numbers. And you come from an IT background. What did you do for NASA that helps you not only as an IT guy, but that's to help you with these economic numbers that you're telling me about right now?
So I'm having a tech background, being an engineer by trade. I'm a very data-driven guy. So, I look at the numbers, and I tend not to operate on emotions. I tend to operate on numbers, and really be able to make decisions that are data-driven. And so that's the core of who I am as a person.
So you're
I'm
telling me when you're
yeah.
when you're in DC and you're making decisions on what to vote for, you're not going to be drawn with your heartstrings. You're going to be drawn with the numbers and the reality of what those numbers are looking like.
It's really easy if you're making decisions emotionally to get drawn in the wrong direction. What you need to do is look at the numbers and, to the degree possible, make decisions on the numbers that are going to impact the most people. And that's really what the core of being an engineer in the internet is. You have billions of customers that you're trying to serve worldwide, and the edges of those billions of customers going to tend to be the most vocal for the features they want. And if you respond to the edges of that, as opposed to just looking at what would benefit the largest number of customers and what is the problem that customers really need to solve, and you look at it with data, then you can make the right decisions that benefit the most people. And that's exactly how we should be. That's exactly how I will lead in the government. Is I will be looking at, as a representative, you need to benefit the most people in your district. And one of the great ways to do that is to make decisions based on data, not based on emotions. And so you'll see a lot of that from me when I get to Congress.
I like hearing that because it tells me that the people can rely on not only on your vote but your decision making process before that. That you're not going to just say, "Hey, look, this pulls my heartstrings this way. This is what the media is saying that way." You're going to look at what the numbers are going to do for the people in your state, and you're going to say, "Hey, look, based on the people in my district, rather, or in my state." Because even though you're representing your district, I mean, you're pretty much you're representing your whole state, but you're focus on the people in your own district, of course. It was a long way of just saying, saying what I'm trying to tell you. But when you do that, you're going to look at not only the numbers and how they overlap the population, and basically see where it covers the most people using those numbers.
And that I think is the ticket to making good decisions, whether it's in government or in business or in technology. You really need to look at what's going to benefit the largest number of people. And I think the other benefit to that, William, is that it becomes much easier to explain the basis of your decisions. And I believe that one of the things that's going on with government is that the decisions that are being made are not explained. Doing these things? Why is this the right decision? Why does this solve the problem at hand better than these other decisions we can make?
Mhm.
And if you present your argument to the American people and to the voter in a data-driven way, and this doesn't have to be boring with reams of Excel spreadsheets and all that other kind of stuff, you can just explain like why this particular decision or this particular policy is the best one and will benefit the most people. And so that's really how I intend to be the voice of the voter and to govern, is by making those kinds of data-driven decisions that aren't, as you say, tugging on the heartstrings.
And we've kind of talked about representing the people in your district. How long have you lived in your district?
Washington for 25 years now. I grew up in the Midwest.
Oh wow.
So I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin. I have those Midwest values, and I brought those with me as I moved west. And so I've been in the state for 25 years. I now live in a little community about 25 miles east of Seattle called Falls City. It's a super cute little place. It's right on the Snoqualmie River. And it sits sort of at the western edge of the massive District 8 that I described, the 10,000 square miles of wilderness and all types of different climates and different types of economics as well. So
And all the Republicans
25
are hot,
years.
and all the Republicans are hot in the mountains and those in that vast wilderness, as you pointed out earlier.
Than ever before, William. You know why? There's a lot to hide from right now, which is another thing that I plan to fix when I get there. And you know what? Talking about hiding, being in tech for 30 years and being a conservative has certainly been an interesting experience. You're surrounded by a lot of radical left philosophies and ideas. And constantly I'm getting bombarded with this diversity and inclusion training and, you know, giving pronouns at our meetings and really just, really needing to push back against that, but very much being in the what I still consider to be the silent majority. Or most of conservatives in tech are silent majority. I happen to be one of those that's quite outspoken, which has certainly made for an interesting career in tech,
I,
especially in the internet space.
and I got to claim ignorance on this. I didn't realize that NASA was up there in the state of Washington. So
Sorry, I digress from your question. Yeah, so let me talk a little bit about NASA. Thank you. So, in my graduate degree at MIT, I specialized in flight control systems. And one of the things that I actually got really interested in, so I design control systems for launch vehicles that send satellites into space, and for satellites themselves. And then I got involved in doing computer simulations of launch vehicles. And I think I probably had one of the coolest jobs in my early 20s imaginable. My job was to write computer simulations of multi-billion-dollar launch vehicles. In this case, it was Titan IV, which was the Air Force's heavy booster. And I would write these simulations, and then on launch day, excuse me, they would send balloons up in the atmosphere, and they would measure the winds aloft. And then they would give you those, and then you had 3 minutes to run a simulation, and all you had to do was give thumbs up or thumbs down as to whether that multi-billion-dollar vehicle would actually make it into orbit and deliver its payload. And it was you and me and two other companies with simulations. And I was doing this in my early 20s, and it was probably one of the coolest and most stressful things. Because if you said yes and it didn't make it there, which never happened to me,
yeah,
I have to
right,
say. But I
right.
always worried every single time. It's like, oh boy, is this going to be the time when I give the thumbs up and this thing doesn't make it? So that was sort of my introduction to that. And then I went on at MIT to be studying control systems, and I got really interested in bioengineering. And what I was trying to understand is how the human brain processes signals to determine how your body is oriented in space. And so the best way to do that is to measure it on astronauts, because when they go into outer space, it completely changes the way that the brain perceives motion. And so I got to be the one who did these experiments with the astronauts prior to their flight. And then I was one of the very first humans to see the astronauts when they returned to run these experiments immediately. So again, early in my 20s, I had, the privilege of working with astronauts, who are some of the most highly educated, amazing people. And I always kind of dreamed of being an astronaut. I'll be honest, I'm an astronaut nerd. And so I still stay in touch. I sometimes say it would have been great had SpaceX existed when I was in my 20s, because I probably would have worked very closely on that. So that's my
That,
background in that.
That's pretty good. I mean, not MIT am I impressed with, but it sounds like because you're the technical the technical skills that those jobs needed. I think it really gives you another unique set of qualities to go to Congress. I think where there's a lot of people that we don't know about what their background is, or they get to Congress, or like, what did those guys do? And they certainly aren't spending our money well. And so I'm always looking for somebody who is either a little bit smarter or a little bit more fiscally conservative, that they're looking for ways to save our money. And it sounds like you being a numbers guy, that's good. But before I get off too far off subject, I want to tell you the gentleman that I told you about that's also running in Washington. His name is Leif Johnson, and so. Yeah, and so he complimented over here a minute ago. He says another fellow engineer candidate. So
Yeah, I can't wait. Leaf and I have not had the pleasure of meeting, so Leaf, we must meet soon.
yeah, so he commented. Another friend of mine, Al Juno, commented too. But I thought that Leif Johnson, I mentioned to you a little while ago or earlier, that I had interviewed another candidate out there, and that's who that is Leif. So you have that you're an America First candidate. Oh, by the way, I don't know if we didn't announce this too much, but people can watch this Facebook Live on William Wallace for America. If they're not watching it now, you'll be able to find this also on William Wallace for America right now, live and in the future for the replay. But you had mentioned that you're an America First candidate. Can you explain what you mean by that? You talked about it a little bit earlier in the interview, but let's talk about that again as more people come on.
America first, absolutely, and another word for that, I think some people call it the MAGA platform. This is really President Trump's platform to take care of America and make sure we're strong and safe at home. And I am a firm believer in that. America first to me, and we saw this in President Trump's presidency. It means energy independence, which we had. It means $2 gas. It means security at home, and it means strategic influence abroad. I don't know. I don't know about you, but we're a complete laughing stock when it comes
We
to the
are.
rest of the world. We have no respect from anyone, and that used to really be the hallmark of America. Is we were respected as strong leaders and doing the right thing for the world, and that is no longer the case at all. And so America First is really about strengthening our country at home, and that is things like taking care of our children is number one. Our children are our future, and I think many people are seeing what's going on. The radical left policies. There's grooming of our children. There's sexualization of our children, and there's indoctrination through things like critical race theory. And so America First is really about taking care of our children. And one of the first things that's one of the points. One of the first things I want to do when I get to Congress is I want to pass a Parents' Bill of Rights. I believe that parents should have the right to choose where their kids go to school, number one. And number two, they should be able to choose what's in the curricula for their kids. And we've seen over the last couple of years, in fact, we saw what happened in Virginia. The parents really
Absolutely
drove
right.
that whole wave. And I would really sum up 2022 and 2023 as the years of the parents. This is where we return the rights to the parents. The kids, our children do not belong to the state. They do the state, and the radical left believes that they do belong to the state. And so, one of the things that I'm really going to be focused on is taking care of our children. And that's one of them. A couple other points, happy to dive into these. I feel very strongly that our country is being invaded from the south, William. That we have no border, and if you don't have a border, you don't have a country. And I believe, and when I get to Congress, I will immediately work to close down the border. And that means I believe we need to finish the wall. We have the contracts, it's rusting in the desert. We need to finish it. We need to finish it quickly. And we've got a lot of it funded. We've already paid for it. Second, we need to support Border Patrol. They had the highest fatality rate in their history last year. And that's because they're being hamstrung by terrible policies. And I hold many people responsible for that, but primarily Secretary Mayorkas, who I believe has violated his oath to the country and to his office and needs to be impeached. And I will bring articles of impeachment against him. Third, I believe that we need to empower ICE. We need to go out and we need to track down every single legal immigrant in this country, and we need to deport them. If I just were to sum all this up, I believe in making immigration a privilege again for our country.
I
We
like
have
that.
laws. We have laws for immigration, and these laws are not being followed. Our country is being invaded. Not to mention drugs, crime, human trafficking. This is a catastrophic situation on the border. We can fix this. We know how to fix this, and that'll be the second thing I'll be really focused on. And then the third main point, and there are actually six in my platform, William, but I'm just going to talk about the top three. The last one is that we need to secure our elections. So, if we don't have our children
That's
taken
right.
care of, we don't have a future for our country. If we don't have a secure border, we don't have a country, right? And the third thing is if we don't have secure elections, we don't have a republic,
That's
right?
right.
And so we have seen. I firmly believe that the last election was stolen. There's plenty of data to prove that, and you can see what's going on in Wisconsin. You can see films like 2000 Mules that's
Hmm.
coming out by Dinesh D'Souza with plenty of evidence. I know here in Washington State, we were the first state to do voting by mail, and so in a way, we were the ones who originated all of this bad stuff that's
Nonsense.
been
Yeah,
going on.
nonsense. Right.
Nonsense. It's not one of our proudest moments as a state. We were the beginners of all of this insanity with mail-in voting. So and President Trump has been talking about about the elections a lot recently, and I've had similar ideas to him as well for a while now. I believe a few things need to happen. We need to get technology out of voting, and we need to get it, and that's interesting coming from a technologist, right? These Dominion voting machines, for example, we have no idea what code is running on those. The government does not have access to that code, has never subpoenaed that code. And so we don't know. And these things are connected to the internet. And it's like my security friends say, if they had their way, the best security would be to unplug every computer from the internet.
You
And
know,
so, yeah,
I'm working with I know I agree with you because I'm working with with a group here in Louisiana. We're getting ready to redo our election system, our voting machines. And there's a lot of Republican-minded people, Republicans I talk to. They're like, "Oh, the electronic systems are secure. You're crazy to think about that they're being hacked into." And I always tell people this: do you believe in credit card theft? And they go, "Well, of course." Do you believe in identity theft? And they're like, well, absolutely, it happens. People hack into your bank accounts, people hack into your electronics all the time. Why wouldn't anybody want to hack into our elections? Why wouldn't anybody want to be able to say, I did that? And of course, the answer is emphatically yes. There's going to be people out there. If there's nefarious people wanting to hack into steal your identity, why wouldn't there be anybody that wants to steal our elections? And I interviewed, now I've interviewed, I don't know if you know this or not, I've interviewed Wendy Rogers from Arizona. I've interviewed Pat Colbeck. I've interviewed Doug Frank, all these about election integrity. I also interviewed about a month ago Carmen Maria Montiel. She's running for Congress. Did you meet her?
though I haven't met her yet. Yeah.
Yeah, she's running down in Texas. She's from Venezuela. Now she grew up in Venezuela when it was, on its rise, being the great country. She saw it become the great country that it once was, and she's very familiar with the Dominion voting machines. And then she actually became Miss Venezuela. Then she was runner up for Miss Universe. She came to America to go to college, and she said now she can't go back to her country because she's watched it fall. Now, I'm not as much against electronic voting machines. I'm pro, and I'll say it this way: I'm pro paper ballots. I like
to say, yep.
Yeah, what Louisiana is getting ready to do, it satisfies both people where you have a paper ballot, an electronic machine can count it, but they're going to have automatic audits with the paper ballots. So for the people that want those quick answers, they want that election night party, and when the polls close at 7 or 8, at 8:05, 7:05, they get the results of who won, so they can have their party. For those people, they're going to get the results fast. But for people who want accuracy and auditable elections, they're going to have the paper ballot and do automatic audits. I like that system because it protects both. It kind of gives that satisfaction for people who believe in the electronics and want the results quicker. That's all it's about. When people who say they want electronic voting machines, they just want quick results. There's no reason to say that they do a better job counting than a person. And the reality is, on average in our country, the average precinct is about 1,200 people. So when you look that are registered to vote in a precinct, so when you look at that, there's no reason why at the end of the night, if you've got 3, 4, a dozen poll workers at there, that they can't automatically go hand count paper ballots and do it not much longer than the machines take, basically. I know it's a big difference in reality, but they can count it on it right in the spot, the paper ballot, and be able to say, okay, the machine said this, the paper ballot's added to this, and if there's a discrepancy, guess what? Then there's a problem that we got to address so we can secure our republic. And another thing that I wanted to talk about before we got too far away from it is that we talk about all these illegals coming in. They're the one. Imagine this: would you want to come to America if you realize that in a generation you're going to be straddled with having to pay high taxes to help cover the national debt that we're strapping on our youth? You're talking about doing the right things for our children, which I really appreciate that you're looking out for them. The other thing that we need to talk about is the debt. the trillions of dollars that we are adding in debt. You made a great point earlier where you said 80% of the dollars that we're spending today were printed in the last year or two, I think you said. What was it? How did that statistic go?
80% of the money in circulation was printed in the last year. So it's insane. Our
Yeah.
government is essentially, running printing presses in the basements, if you can think about it that way.
Well, think about it
Uh,
this way. It's a boondoggle because they're printing money out of thin air. They don't have to. They don't have to have. They don't have to have a building to operate it. They don't have to pay employees to create it. They don't have to create a product. They don't have to create any kind of mode of transportation to get a product out there to create this money. I mean, a regular business in a capitalist society has to do something to create income. They got to produce either you know, you know, some sort of material, whether it is intellectual or whether it's a physical product. They got to create something. They have to pay employees to do it. They have to pay overhead, and then they pay taxes, and then their profits go to them. The government's not even going to do that. It's kind of a boondoggle if you think about it. They're printing money out of nothing, and they're charging us the interest, and then the inflation cost is another tax that we're going to pay. And then when you look at what's going to happen years down the road between inflation and taxes, interest, and supply chains being short, we got a big problem coming up down the pipe if we don't do things now and put the right people in office now to solve these problems now before we have to face it head to head in the next generation or two.
you said any better. I agree completely with all of that. The fiscal policy of the federal government, um, the lack of balanced budgets, the out of control spending, the out of control printing of money is going to be the undoing of this country. And pretty soon, what we're going to see is the U.S. dollar is no longer the currency of the world. And you can imagine what's going to happen when the U.S. dollar isn't that currency anymore.
So
Um,
you're on a roll. I kind of interrupted Joe. I'll remind you where you were. We talked about illegals. You've talked about illegal aliens. You've talked about what you would do there. You talked about some of the things that you would do with putting parents first. What are some of the other things that you want to do that you also think unites us as a country?
So unites us as a country. So just kind of a few introductory things on that space. So um, you know, I think that the way it is, and I think everybody would agree here, right, is that our country is more divided now than it's ever been before, right? And this division is really the source of a lot of the problems. And what I think, and this is unfortunate, but what we've lost, I think, is the ability for us to respectfully talk to each other and debate and discuss our differences. And this used to be the stuff that would happen, right? You would be, in the pub or the coffee shop or, over at your friend's house having dinner, and you would bring different political views to
Right.
the event, and you would discuss them, and but now instead of active listening, as I call it, I'm seeing conversations quickly devolve, and this happens to me. I imagine you see this too. And suddenly now we're not having a discussion; we're having a shouting match,
Hmm.
and nobody is even listening to each other. Or even worse, in a way, people are avoiding having these conversations altogether. And I think the only way that democracy can work is through communication. That's how the best ideas work, right?
Right.
We discuss things, we vet our ideas, and then the best ideas win. Meaning, we each put in our piece, and that's how we get the best laws and the best ideas. And so, one of the things that I think we need to get back to, and that will unite us as a country, is if we can have that ability to really start to have these uncomfortable conversations with each other again. We've really shied away from those to a degree. And then also during the pandemic lockdowns, there frankly really wasn't an avenue to have these
Right.
conversations. And so we need to return to that stuff. And we need to feel comfortable in order to do that because honestly, and I know this might sound a little ma and apple pie, but there really aren't that many differences between us. We
Oh no,
all
I
want
agree. Yeah,
safety, security. We
absolutely.
all want to live in a country where we feel like we're not going to be at war any moment, that our kids are going to get a good education. All these things are inherently who we are as human beings. And I think we've lost sight of a lot of that. And so, what I intend, I'm always a person who wants to have those uncomfortable conversations, and I'll admit they make me feel uncomfortable at times, especially with friends. But I always come away from it feeling more educated, with more understanding. And what I will be doing when I get to Congress is reaching out across the aisle, and across even my own party, where people think differently, and having those conversations. And I think we need to return to that. And so those are the things that unite us. They're basic human values and needs.
I agree with you 100%. And now, because I'm always saying, look, we're not that different. And if we look for it, it takes a little bit more work to find the things that unite us. But when we do that, we can reach across the aisle and not give up our own ideologies. And I think that's an important caveat for people to understand, because it used to be said when you would say, oh, I'm going to reach across the aisle, somebody would always say, you see that, that Republican's going to reach across the aisle, it means he's a rhino. And I always say that if we stop, pointing fingers like that, even at people in our own party, that we don't have to give up our ideologies to reach across the aisle. And as a matter of fact, if we work harder to find things that unite us, it might just be a few things in some situations. But you know what? That's better for the people of our country, because if you find things that you can, if you're uniting on something smaller, that means that some of these spending bills that they're passing are going to be even smaller. Imagine, if you will, Democrats, Republicans coming together on the few things that they can unite on a spending bill, and saying, you know what, the spending bill is only going to be what we can unite on. Well, instead of $1 trillion bill, it might be, a billion, a couple $1 billion bill. Now, granted, I know that I am being idealistic. I know that, I'm dreaming a little bit, and it's probably a long way away. But I really think that if we continue, it's part of my mission, looking for those things that unite us, then we can get closer to that dream, to that vision, if you will.
With you, William. I mean, I think we have to remember. Sorry, there's the outdoors. There's a couple bugs, so now it
It's
really
okay.
is getting
I've
like
actually seen a
it's
couple
getting
things
like a
flying
swamp.
around. Yeah.
It's really getting like a swamp out here.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, I couldn't agree more. And honestly, this country is an idealist. This is an ideal, right?
Right.
Is an ideal, and look, we're the greatest country on earth because of that ideal, right? Because we were divinely inspired. And I think we need to hold on. Like, Americans have always been seen as idealists, right? And we need to hold on to that, but more importantly, we need to return to it. And I'm not seeing it right now. There's a lot. There's there's anger. There's frustration. There's there are people feeling disenfranchised, disaffected right now, and frankly, a lot of people are feeling like they've just given up.
Yeah.
And I really believe that if we get back to having these conversations and we realize it's not going to be easy, but we all want the same things. I do believe that idealism is the key. We have to do it, and it's the way out of this. Um, that said, there are some, I will go as far to say, some evil elements on both sides of the aisle that
Right.
we do need to put curbs on, and we need to stop the things they're doing. They are outwardly trying to destroy our country, but that is not the average person. It isn't
Right.
the average American. And the message and the of the country is being hijacked by these people. It's being hijacked by the soundbite nature of the mainstream media. And that's not really what's happening in most places in the country. Most people are just trying to live, and they're proud of their country, and they just want to protect the shining city on the hill that we have. And so I am idealistic too. I'm really idealistic
Yeah.
like you, and I believe we can save it. I do believe that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this. Uh, we
Yeah,
have to
because
do
it's a
this,
lot.
right?
It's a lot of work what you're doing, putting yourself on the line. And like you, I get tired of hearing people talk about, well, those evil Democrats, and then of course, oh, those evil Republicans, and those rhinos, and those liberals, and those conservatives, and I worry that Republicans have stolen the word conservatism, because conservatism, as I said 1,000 times on my show before, knows no party line. And instead of pointing fingers and creating these labels on groups, we need to start pointing to the good ideas. and focus it on good ideas instead of ideologies and narratives. And I get it. I mean, I've got friends that say that's way too idealistic because you've got the media, which is really, fueling the fan or fueling the fire with the narratives that are dividing us every day on all the issues. But it's going to take a lot of really strong-minded people like yourself, from what I'm seeing, stand up and say, hey, look, we're going to find ways that unite people on good ideas to solve problems instead of creating more problems to keep us in a job. Because ultimately, that's what happens in DC. They keep creating more problems with all the intertwined legislation. That all that does is creates more problems for us to have to try to figure out and live by.
Or, I mean, I think a lot of this comes down to the fact that, we have an entire class that are career politicians now, that have established themselves in Washington, D.C., or frankly even at the state level. We see this as well, and they're not in this typically to do what's right for the country. They're in
Right,
this to make themselves wealthy and powerful. Many of them think they're smarter than us, and that's a problem. And that is, our republic has been to a good degree hijacked by these people. And what happens is if you really just more are worried about your job, like you said, you're not going to make the brave decisions, right? You're
right,
not going to make the hard decisions. And so, one of the things that I've been saying is I'm a firm believer in term limits, and I think we should have term limits, 2 to 3 at the most in the House and 1 in the Senate. Um, and I think that if we really go back to what the founders of our nation thought, I don't think they ever expected career politicians. What they
no,
said, and if you read the Federalist Papers or any of the documents around the founding of our country, what was expected is that you would come out of your job as a silversmith, or a steel worker, or a truck driver, or an engineer, and you would spend a couple few years working for the government, spending the energy to do your part as a citizen to make things better, and then you would exit back to your private life and you would turn it over to another person. You would
right,
not spend 30, 40, 50 years and come out with hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. That was never intended. And I think
right,
it's a big part of the problem that we face right now. We got the McConnells and the McCarthys and the Pelosi's and you name it across. And this isn't a Democrat Republican thing.
right,
It's a
exactly.
problem, right? And so this needs to change. And one of the things that I'm so excited about America First, William, is that the red wave, the red tsunami, some call it, that's coming. There are lots of people like me who are not career politicians. They're not lawyers. They're coming at this because they really, really feel the need to save the country, and they do not like the direction it's going. And I've been making connections with these people all over the country, and I am super excited. When we get there, we're going to bring a whole new level of energy. We'll vote as a block, and I really do believe we can start to clean up the mess that exists in DC that's created by these career-minded politicians. So I
Yeah.
think 2022 is going to be amazing. It's going to really be a game changer for us. So couldn't be more excited, and couldn't be more excited to be part of it.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I really think that more people are waking up, and I'm looking forward to that. And I don't even want to call it a red wave. I know it's going to be a red wave where Republicans get in and take over, and all the Republicans get excited. But it really is about America first. It really is about ideas, and that's why I'm always, when I say reach across the aisle, for some people who are in elected office, they reach across the aisle for legislation. On my show, I try to reach across the aisle when it comes to finding things that unites us, because I really believe that it's conservative, fiscally conservative values that really not only unite us, but are just good ideas, and capitalism and all the things that make America great. And when we really start talking about those values, there's a lot of those Democrats that are really on our side. There's a lot of those people that are slightly left of center. They might vote Democrat for one reason or the other, but if we really work harder to reach across the aisle without giving up our ideologies, I really truly think we bring more people together. And that's what for me, the red wave is about more people realizing that the ideas that a lot of that coincidentally, the Republicans are pushing are the ideas that are not only working and will work to bring our country back, but they'll secure America for our future. And I think that's what we need to be proud of, not just that red wave, but a wave of good ideas that are going to save our country. And that's the way I like to put it.
Thinking of, I mean, it is America first, right? It's not conservatism first, right? It's
Right.
about doing what's right for the country, and that's what I think is awesome about this platform, right? And it's also not about isolationism. It's not about America withdrawing from the world, right? It's that we're taking, we have to take care of ourselves, right? As well, and we need to be strong to be good citizens of the world, and frankly, to be the leaders of the world. So and we are the leader of the free world. If we're not there, there is nobody else. And so I agree. And like I said at the beginning of the interview, it's all about finding the best ideas that benefit the most people. Not being out there on the extreme margins, trying to find policies that work for the very, very loud and vocal minority. It's about finding that sweet spot and taking care of America and making sure that we honor all of those who've gone before, who died for our country, defending our liberties. We have to do that, and we have to take care of America for our kids and their kids, and so on. It's our duty as citizens, and I take that duty very seriously. And that means making sure that we strengthen our country, we heal our country, and we move forward. And I do believe we can do it.
I love it. So now we've talked about uniting people throughout the whole interview. We've talked about that quite a bit. So I'm going to ask this question, and some people might think, well, that's kind of the same question. But when I ask it this way, I always get a different answer from some people. And so it's one of my questions I ask everybody that I interview on my show, which is what unites us as Americans? And we've talked about a lot of different things, but it's amazing. I'll give you an example. I interviewed Gordon Bond with Bond Arms down in Texas. His show is on my podcast right now, and you would think that he would say that Bond Arms. You'd think he would be the Second Amendment unites us, or or our Bill of Rights unites us, and he said charity. Charity unites us. So it was a completely different answer. While the whole interview was about the Second Amendment. So even though through our interview we've talked about what unites us, what do you think is the one unifying thing that Americans can unite on in our country? What's the biggest thing you think?
Thing, I like the charity thing. I like the Constitution. Obviously, I'm sure you've had both those answers.
Yeah.
Honestly, for me, the biggest issue and the thing that's number one on my platform is our children are the big uniting factor for us as a country.
No one
I
said
think
that
that
before.
it cuts across everything of what we are. Everything we do is to provide for our children, to provide safety and security, to give them good opportunities in life. As a matter of fact, if you think about it, our country, the reason that people want to come and emigrate to our country is because of opportunity, right? It's life,
Right.
liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Where the word happiness, back when the framers wrote the Constitution, really meant opportunity. That's what the word meant back then, and the meaning of
Right.
the word has changed. And so, to me, really what it is that we can all agree what we want for our children, and that is to have a good life, to be safe, to have the opportunities we have. And there's no other country in the world that has provided that for our children and our children's children and those who have gone before us. So, by far and away for me, it is our kids. And I will share right now that I have three 13-year-olds.
Oh,
So
how you
this is not triplets. I have twins, a boy and a girl, and then I have a blended family with my beautiful partner Jen. She has a son, and if you can imagine what our house is like, having three 13-year-olds bouncing around, and then you add on to that, William, trying to run a campaign for Congress.
I can only
It is
imagine.
it is
Yeah.
a zoo of biblical proportions,
Well,
and
maybe you
so
ran for office to get away from the chaos at the house. You decided to run for office, right?
don't tell anyone, all right? Don't tell anyone. My secret's
So
out.
I love it.
Yeah. So
So why should people support you? Why should I've been playing? I don't know if you've noticed or not, but your website has been streaming at the bottom this whole time. So people all over the country could support you if they want to support you. But of course, you want the support from everybody, but you really need the support by their vote there in Washington. But so why should people support you? Why should people vote for you?
So I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I just want to double down on this a little bit.
Yeah,
As I said, I'm not a politician. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a regular person, and I want to make that clear to everyone. And I believe our country's at
a
risk right
rocket
now.
scientist, regular person, but
Fair enough. Rocket scientist, regular person. But I'm just an American. I go to work every day, just like you all do, to provide for my kids, provide for my family. Um, and I've spent my whole career being a fighter, fighting for in many cases, the customer, but customers are just people. And finding out, I keep going back to this, is finding that common middle that really benefits the most people. And I fight for that every single day in the work that I do. And I'm also like a problem solver. It's the nature of what I do. I mean, being an engineer, the root of that is being a genius, right? It's about coming up with clever new ideas and solutions, and then figuring out how to make those things a reality. So I bring that problem solving capability, and then I also bring this ability to what I call building agreement across multiple diverse different ideas. I'll work in my role in tech across thousands of people, across dozens of organizations, all of whom have conflicting goals. They all have their own bottom lines, and we need to find the right solution that gets everybody on board and gets that thing through to reality, and gets it built and into the hands of people. And that's honestly what those skills are, what I'm going to take to Congress. And I think they're 100% transferable, right? It's all
right,
about just solving problems. It doesn't matter
right,
what the problem is. It's being able to work with people and being able to figure out to reach agreement and to build the best ideas together. And so that's what I'm going to bring. Um, and then I just want to kind of close out with this. I know there's a lot of anger and frustration. It cuts across the country as a whole. Doesn't matter where you are on the political spectrum. Um, People aren't feeling like their voices are heard. They don't feel like their representatives are in fact representing them.
right,
And
exactly.
and I, and that, I see that everywhere, and people are feeling disenfranchised and disaffected, right? And I feel that too. And I think a lot of people probably on your show are feeling those same things. And what I bring is that I share that with you. I understand. I am you. We are together in this. And I'm running because I asked to be your voice. And I promise you that I will be your voice, and I will represent you, and I will not represent me or my needs. And I will fight every single day to take our country back. And that is what I bring, all of those things. And I think my experience and my ability to do the work I've done in tech is really going to make me successful at that. So that's what I bring.
Wow, Scott, I'm impressed. That was fantastic. Well, I could have said it better myself, but then I'm not running for office either. But I think the way you said it though is a true testament of a good way to wrap it all into one package, if you will. And I really hope that people to get to know you will. I think this interview I think is a great synopsis of everything you have now have to offer. But from the beginning to the end, I think it really makes a great example, and I hope people listen to it more because I think if people do, they're going to see a good candidate here.
I can't tell you how much of a pleasure it has been to sit here. We both are in beautiful parts of the country, and be able to connect and talk about America and what we want to do to save her. And I really am excited for this race, and can't wait to continue my outreach. I leave this evening. We're doing a big loop around the east side of the mountains to meet with my constituents out there. It's my favorite thing to do, is to go and talk to people,
Right,
understand what's going on. Many people have never even seen a candidate, because most of the candidates live on the west side of the mountains, and
right.
they don't go over there. So I cannot wait. Those are my people, and I'm leaving right after we wrap up this interview to go and talk to them. So I'm
Well,
super
speaking
excited.
Speaking of which, we're going to wrap it up here in just a second. But once I close it out, stay online because once I stop in the video, I'm going to talk to you off camera for a few minutes. And but Scott, thank you again for coming on, and I appreciate it. When is the runoff, or when's the primary?
August the 2nd, and we're what's called a top two go through. Some people call it a jungle primary. So whoever gets the two candidates with the most votes, regardless of party, go through to the general. So it's August the 2nd here in
And
Washington.
I thought Louisiana was the only one that had the jungle primary. You know,
In
we have.
another way, William.
What's that?
We're joined in yet another way.
Exactly right. Yet another way. Well, all right. Well, we're going to keep up with you on August 2nd. Everybody else, thank you so much for listening in today. Please share the video, share the interview. To find the podcast, you go on any podcast app at William Wallace for America and listen to this. And also, please share the podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. Have a great day.